Chapter 8 P.M.S Physical to Mental Sickness. It all started out normal, a typical American family living in the outskirts of the city with 2.5 kids, a fenced-in home, toys in the backyard, nothing outside the ordinary. Liza, the mother, was a homemaker who took pride in rearing her twin boys and was excited about the child on the way. The father, Liza's husband, was a well-established businessman who provided well for his family. There were a lot of late nights at the office, but his wife never complained since she knew working late was how they kept their comfortable lifestyle of a nice home, decent vehicles, fun weekends, and annual vacations abroad. Years passed of the day-to-day routine, rearing children and her husband furthering his career. This required business trips, which kept him away from home for 3 to 4 days at a time, a couple of times per month. After a while, Liza eventually began growing increasingly tired of her husband not being home enough to spend quality time with her and the children, but continued not complaining since he made sure she and the children were well taken care of. She didn't mind the late work nights, but the multiple days away so often is started to get to her. Liza, being pregnant with her third child, has approached the end of her third trimester and is ready for delivery. Derek, her husband, was there for the birth of their new daughter, whom they named Lyric, after Liza. Since she used to enjoy writing music, they rejoiced about having a healthy baby and took her home to her beautifully decorated, colorful, artful room. Her husband took 2 weeks off of work to bond and help out with the newborn before returning to his job. Everything went back to normal with Liza taking care of the children while her husband, Derek, went back to working late nights at the office and 3 to 4 day business trips 2 to 3 times per month. Lyric eventually was due for her first wellness checkup. The baby came home cranky and uncomfortable due to having shots and blood work, but otherwise fine. Several days go past and Liza receives a phone call from the pediatrician informing her that she needed to come in to speak with her. She asked Dr. Garner why she cannot speak to her over the phone. The doctor stated it's best to explain everything face to face. Liza asked the doctor what was wrong. Dr. Garner expressed how it's best practice to inform patients about any information face to face. She informed her doctor she would be in first thing in the morning. Dr. Garner told Liza to make sure she brings Lyric. She stayed up all night worrying about what the doctor could possibly want to speak to her about. Her husband tried to assure her that everything would be fine and she should just get some sleep. The morning finally approaches. Derek went to work. Liza dropped the twins off at their kindergarten class while she and the baby went to see the pediatrician. Dr. Garner had a look on her face that told Liza something was not right. The doctor informed her the blood tests came back and she tested positive for HIV. Liza was completely confused, irate, hurt, and every other mixed emotion, screaming, "How did this happen? How is this possible? Why was this not detected during my pregnancy?" The doctor calmly told Liza that her last checkup was when she was 7.5 months pregnant and everything was fine from the test at that time, and if she was recently infected, it can take up to 3 months before an HIV test can detect the presence of the virus from antibodies in the blood. The doctor informed Liza that she needs to tell her husband to get tested and ask her if she has been with anyone else outside of her marriage. She scornfully told Dr. Garner that she has never cheated on her husband, then snatched her baby's diaper bag off of the counter and made a sharp turn with the baby stroller as she forcefully walked out of her office. Liza drove home, seething with fear, rage, and disgust about her and the baby's new horrifying health statuses. She paces the floor of her home most of the day waiting for her husband to get home to confront him since she was unable to reach him at the office due to him being in meetings all day. When Derek finally came home, Liza walked up to him 1 inch away from his face and asked him, "What the hell have you been up to behind my back?" Derek acted confused, began sweating, asked her, "What are you talking about? What is wrong with you?" Liza then showed Derek the documentation for both she and Lyric that read, "The blood specimen you submitted was reactive for HIV antibodies." Tears began pouring down Derek's eyes. He dropped to his knees hugging Liza around her thighs, wailing and begging for her forgiveness. He then began to divulge his double life and admitting how he wanted to tell her so many times, but never got up the courage to do so, that he has been sexually involved with a man. Liza pushed Derek off of her legs, began throwing things around the house at him while yelling and crying for him to get out. Derek dodged the vase, lamp, and a picture frame as he made it out of the front door. Liza went to check on the children who were crying in the bedroom after hearing the commotion. She calmed them down and told them everything was fine. After she put them to bed, she stayed up all night, sobbing, and unable to sleep due to millions of thoughts running through her mind about her and the newborn's health, her twin boys, her marriage, and flags she ignored throughout the marriage. The next morning, after dropping the twins off at school, she called around to multiple law offices and made an appointment to speak with a divorce attorney. As time goes on, Liza gets adjusted to being a single mother and finds part-time employment to supplement the child support for her 3 children. She focuses all of her attention on being a great mother, while continuing to ensure she and Lyric take their daily medications for their diagnosis. The twin boys eventually graduate high school after Lyric enters middle school. Liza sits Lyric down and finally explains to her, since she feels she is at an age where she can understand now, how she has been taking medication for an illness called human immunodeficiency virus, better known as HIV, and not vitamins as she has been told all of these years. Liza explained to her daughter how her father passed the illness to them and how they will have to live with it for the rest of their lives, but can still live a normal lifestyle as long as they continue to take their antiretroviral medication and stay healthy. Lyric eventually starts high school, is more mature and curious, and begins to research her HIV diagnosis. She learns that she can pass the virus to anyone she becomes intimate with without protection, how it can also be passed through blood and breast milk, and how the virus cannot survive in urine, saliva, tears, or sweat since they do not have enough white blood cells for the virus to grow. Lyric continued successfully in high school with perfect attendance and honor roll while continuously growing angry and hiding that emotion about her lifelong disease. She becomes a senior in high school and has received several letters from different universities for scholarships due to her academic excellence since elementary school and scoring in the highest percentile on every test the school has required her to take. However, Lyric still lives with bitterness, unhappiness, and feeling that life has been unfair to her as she secretly lives with her diagnosis. Lyric develops a promiscuous personality and becomes intimate with several boys at school during her senior year. They were the ones who were well known for having the most friends with benefits with the girls in the school. Neither of the boys used protection, nor did she disclose her status to them. She goes on to pursue her education further by attending one of the universities that gave her a scholarship. She continues to do well academically while still battling her health misfortune emotionally, and increasingly is having a harder time coping with her unfortunate circumstance. She continues her promiscuity with the college guys, graduates, and goes on to have a successful career. However, Lyric does not slow down or cease with her sexual behavior, it actually increases, and she sleeps with many men during her adulthood as well, all unprotected, and knowing that she is putting everyone at risk, starting from high school boys, to the college guys, and now the adult men. Lyric is unconcerned with the results of her actions and continues this behavior. One of the men she has been having an intimate fling with, Walt, happened to be speaking with an older buddy of his about his encounter with Lyric. He informed this close friend how he had been having a flaming fling with a younger chick named Lyric, who was the best he has ever had. He went on describing when and where they were having their rendezvous and how kinky it would get. His friend was relishing in the conversation and amazed with some of the accounts of the when, where, and how of the sexual encounters. His buddy was deeply engaged, enjoying every single detail. However, it was as if something struck him out of nowhere. He paused for a moment. He asked Lyric's age and profession. Walt informed him she was a 25-year-old accountant. His friend stared at him for what seemed like an eternity, with a grim look on his face. Walt asked him, "Why are you looking at me like that, man?" His friend said to him in a slow, solemn monotone voice, "Walt, I have only known of one Lyric in my 50 years of life. She should be about mid-20s now, is in the accounting field, went to school on a scholarship due to her high academic achievement and was a patient of my wife's until she turned 18. His friend asked if her last name was Livingston, when he said it was. His friend told him of a story from 25 years ago that his wife confided in him about a Lyric Livingston, who was born infected with HIV due to her father having sexual relations with a man, catching it, then passing it on to his wife and their unborn child, which happened to be Lyric. Walt slowly stood up and walked out of the front door without saying a word. Walt slid into his car and immediately called his doctor's office for an appointment for testing. The doctor told him he could come in first thing Monday morning of next week. The tests eventually came back and Walt tested positive for HIV. He called law enforcement to report Lyric. She was arrested, her face was all over the news, and multiple men dating back to her high school years came forward divulging that they had also been sexually involved with her without protection or without being informed of her HIV status. Lyric was charged with 9 counts of criminal transmission of HIV. Although there were about 29 men she had been with, the others may not have come forward due to shame or not wanting their wives and girlfriends to know they were cheating. She pleaded guilty and received a 10-year sentence for each count, causing her to spend the rest of her natural life in prison. Lyric confessed after sentencing, saying that she felt since she was dealt an unfair hand, others should be too, especially the men who just want to have sexual encounters, no commitment, and were cheating on their significant others to have flings with her. With no remorse, Lyric stated before being led off in her shackles in Orange Department of Corrections apparel behind the courtroom doors, "They all got what they deserved." Her heart had become cold and hardened over the years, being that she could not get past being an innocent victim of her father's transgressions. Words of wisdom: never allow something you cannot change take control of your life. It can lead to bitterness, poor decisions, and major consequences.